believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day. Spread my wings and fly away. I believe I can soar. I see me running through that open door. I believe I can fly, and I believe I can fly.
Light of a million mornings filled my heart. The sound of a million angels.
Have a pleasant day, everyone. Welcome to the JERVIN Eagle Viewpoints. We have our first freelance moving vlog presentation, and I hope you will enjoy this very moment's topic, which is Virgin Poetry Writing Phase 1, How to Make a Poetry. So this morning, let us start our vlog with a text found in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not in your own understanding, and in your ways acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path." God is so good. He has given us wonderful gifts, and that includes poetry writing to some of us. I hope and I pray that if you are bestowed with this talent, you will not fail God by using this. Now, what is poetry? Poetry is a self-expression. Poetry is what the heart wants to tell the people around you. Poetry is feelings in words. Now, there are actually two kinds of poets who are circulating around this universe. The first, we call them as the defiled poets. Defiled in a sense that they are not natural or normal or virgin in nature, because they become poets by virtue of education or taking a course in English or in literature that makes them an authority in writing poetry. That is the defiled poets. The second is the undefiled poet. Poets who are actually writing without any formal education, without any formal training. It's just a burst of knowledge and then a tried skill, and then they started writing poetry. Now, undefiled poets believe that poets are born and they are not made. Why? Because when you are making poets, that means you are educating them in institutions and then guiding them in step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, step 6, until the last step that they would like to take. Then their originality is lost. Their own ingenuity is already questionable. Thus, educated poets write the same, follow the same, and produce the same. Now, upon knowing the two kinds of poets, let us always try to understand that natural poets get their topics from the heart. Educated poets get their topics from what is great according to surveys, according to the literary books, according to what is suggested by the teacher. But natural and virgin poets usually take the topics from the heart. Now, poetry is not a mere writing. You have to consider two things in poetry: the structure and the concept. Let us begin with the structure. In poetry, you have to decide for your rhymes. Rhymes are the sounds that are similar at the end of every poetic line. So the most common among these rhyming pattern is AA, AA, 4 A's, meaning the end of the 4 lines in a stanza are all the same. We have other patterns which resembles AABB, which means 1 and 2 are the same, and then 3 and 4 is also the same. We have also 1, 3, 2, 4, that is the AB pattern. And then one complicated one that we are seldom using is the ABBA pattern, meaning 1 and 4 is the same, and then 2 and 3 is also the same. Now, that is your rhyme. The second consideration that you should take is actually the syllabication, or the number of syllables that you will use in one line, because rhyme is only the external rhyme. Okay? The internal rhyme is in the number of syllables that makes it tonally very, very the same. Now, a poetry which is very common is like it. I think that I shall never see a poem as lovely as a tree. Again, I think that I shall never see, that is 8, a poem as lovely as a tree, that is 8. Meaning, the rest of the lines in that poetry are all 8 syllables. You call that octasyllabic. If it is 10, decasyllabic. If it is 9, nonasyllabic. Okay? So, that is how you name the syllables in your poetry. Now, after the syllables, you go to the lines. You decide how many lines. Usually, a poetry is good if it is in even lines, because 1 and 2 will converse, 3 and 4 will converse, 5 and 6 will converse. Now, very common poetry usually use 4 lines. We call that quartile. Okay? So, if you will join all of this, you will say A, okay, A, decasyllabic quartile, meaning, okay, the rhymes are all the same. At the end, there will be 4 lines, and then there will be 10 syllables in each of the line. That is how you determine the structure of a poetry. Now, after the structure, let's talk about the content. There are only 2 things that I want you to understand, and I want you to take by heart when you talk about poetry content. Content comes from the heart, meaning there should be a trigger in writing poetry. If you write poetry at random, it will sound very, very dull. It will sound flat in affect because there is no inspiration. So a trigger can be in a form of an inspiration. It can be a form of a sad experience, a good experience, a triumph, a loss, or anything that will inspire you to write something about what you felt for that very moment. That is your trigger. Second, in the content, the choice of words. Remember, in poetry, we are not writing declarative sentences. Meaning, the words should be conceptually used rather than theoretically used. Now, let me give an example. When you talk about sardines in poetry, you don't talk about the fish inside the can. That is theoretical. Rather, you talk about people who are crowded in a certain area. That's why they are called sardines. You call that concept. Okay. So the choice of words will make your poetry trim, will make your poetry attractive, and will make your poetry one that will be desired by people to be read. Now, it can be a hard fact to swallow, but writing a poetry can also mean having a deep vocabulary in the modern English and even in the old or certain literary English. I hope you are learning from us. This is just the first vlog about poetry making. We will have more series about this, and I hope you will support us and you will still follow us, because we will be teaching you how to do your own poetry as the days go by. Now, a certain reminder in doing poetry. Always remember that everywhere you go, have with you a ball pen and a sheet of paper. Or if you are very rich, you can have a cell phone with a stylus. And then, every time that trigger goes inside your mind, write about it. Do not let the day end without putting that into your notes, because triggers only comes once in a while, and when they will be lost, you will forget about it forever. Remember, triggers are needed because you want to write a poetry. Now, at this juncture, I want to share with you a personally made poetry entitled Exhaustion. This is a poetry about an expression of fatigue, an expression of perspiration, an expression of too much work, an expression of a person who just wanted to rest. I hope you will like this poetry. I will be sharing this to you now, and then I will be reading the lines. This poetry is actually a 10-syllabic AAAA quartile. Enjoy reading this poetry or listening to this poetry for a moment. Encroached by a whole day of utopia and dreaming of complete analgesia, preserving few strength in catatonia, gulping to end the day in amnesia. Each hour is a war in the atria, a great mental grappling in dilemma, cliff-hanged by emotional bulimia, calving in spiritual anorexia. The hole is getting deep with enigma. Someday it will stiff us with dystonia, till the time it will stop the vena cava and create concrete Murphy stamina. Having the feeling of rest insomnia, working hard to be a career Dracula. I'm tired and in the state of stigmata. Where are you, O beloved rest anesthesia? Exhaustedly tired poetry is a decasyllabic quartile, AA strict pattern. This poetry is dedicated to all the tired people who still wanted to work and once more. I also dedicate this poetry to the frontliners who are always there, even if they are tired, even if they're exhaustedly fatigued, but still they are doing their part to save people and to save our country. Again, this poetry is dedicated also to the frontliners. Thank you very much for listening and have a great time. Dear vloggers, I hope you like the poetry Exhaustion. It is a unique poetry that describes fatigue and tiredness. We will have the second part of this poetry making vlog in the next opportune time. As of this moment, this is your content provider, Bros Gonzaga Jr., known to my student as Sir Noy. And that's the way the eagle hooked the prey. I hope you learned, and I hope you're starting to feel the urge of writing your own poetry. Because your poetry, or the greatest poetry that you can write, is the poetry of your life. God bless everyone.
And I believe I can fly, and I believe I can fly. Hey, 'cause I
And that's the way the eagle hooked the prey.
believe I can soar.